Hi, this is David Gornoski, host of A Neighbor's Choice and Things Hidden podcast, as well as some of our other programs like Science and You with our chief science advisor, Dr. Yu, and our seed oil survival series that we continue to have great fun unpacking the truth of nutrition. I wanted to give you a quick little message saying we appreciate all the support that we get from our uh, monthly contributors and our one-time donation supporters. And we'd encourage all of you to go to our website, a neighborschoice.com, click on contribute, and make a monthly pledge today, whether it's $1, $5, 15, 20, 50, whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. Just be a part of building this new media project that we've developed to empower and inform, to inspire, to kickstart a scientific renaissance, an anthropological breakthrough and reformation in the church. All these things are possible with your support right now. So make that commitment today and help us keep doing the productions that we have. Thank you. Well, we're back with another conversation on A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm David Gornoski here with my friend Chris Bray, who's going to tell us how this all ends today, like he always does. At least we'll get it a little bit closer to the end. Chris, how you doing, sir?
I'm great. It might end with the sweet meteor of death. I don't know.
Remember when they had, I don't remember, I think it was 2012. Remember they were talking about that comet Elenin was going to get us, and everybody was worried about that for the year. Remember that was at 2011 or 2012, somewhere around there. Comet Elenin, you know?
There's an asteroid that's supposed to be doing a flyby soon. That's like one of the closest flybys we've ever had, like 20,000 miles from Earth orbit.
Well,
So it might be time to welcome that.
sounds like a climate catastrophe that we need a lockdown for, don't
Congress
we?
must act. We must have a lockdown immediately. We must wear masks to keep the asteroid from hitting our planet.
Yeah. Well, hey, we got to do what we got to do to survive. It's a dangerous world out there. And as Michelle Obama said, people think government, what do they do? And you just don't understand. They do everything. I mean, literally, I think I'm quoting her verbatim there. They do everything. They do so much. What would we do without government? Um, but that kind of leads us to the discussion topic today on your Substack, chrisbray.substack.com, where you call it Ground and Pound. This is your new story where you talk about the rhetoric of the Biden administration and the kind of rhetorical strategy that they employ. Um, you talk about in this piece, you say, do yourself the favor of reading some interviews with Joe Biden's speechwriters. And I thought that was interesting. I didn't even think about Joe Biden's speechwriters, but I'm glad, but I'm thinking about Joe Biden's like handlers to get him up to move correctly and stuff. I'm not even thinking about the speechwriter part, but um, you talk about this piece from Politico, Biden speechwriter Jeff Nussbaum, who says that Biden has a bottom line rule: don't be a snob. Biden speeches have lots of carriage returns with short paragraphs and short, sharp sentences, delivering simple ideas in simple language. One of the things from the article, it says, one of the things we try to do in the president's speeches is keep sentences short because Americans are stupid. Oh yeah, sorry, I just needed to. That's what he's trying to say. But really, he is the one who modifies his speeches to the way that makes it easiest for him to read. He puts in dashes and spaces and asks for carriage returns on this line. What's a carriage return? Is that like writer language or something? I'm not familiar.
It breaks up paragraphs. It makes shorter paragraphs.
Okay. So that's just okay. So
it's typewriter language. It's when you hit the return button and the typewriter goes ding.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So it's like having a one line as a paragraph. Yes. I get it. That's like again, like Dr. Seuss, one line like that, but not as advanced rhetoric, right? As Dr. Seuss. I mean, no, that's next level.
Little slower than Dr. Seuss.
Sam, I am is too complicated of a sentence for the Biden speech product. But ultimately, the North Star is to not condescend. Wow. Both in the subject matter covered in a speech and in the delivery of it, Nussbaum said that one of the things I will say as a speechwriter, which President Biden has never said, but which he gets almost intuitively, is that the average American reads at the 8th grade level. Wonder whose fault is that? Government. Here's a transcript of Biden's Valley Forge speech. This is this recent speech. I did not watch the entirety of it. You did, Chris. We can get into your take, but just to kind of set the frame for those who didn't, hear some excerpts. Trump's mob wasn't a peaceful protest. It was a violent assault. They were insurrectionists, not patriots. And when they have to use a word like insurrectionists, they tried every dumbed down word besides that, and they just really couldn't get away. You know what I mean? They couldn't find anything more of a rhetorical hit job, because there's no way they would use like you're saying, a multi-syllable word like that if it wasn't because that's the only one they could get away with. They weren't there to uphold the Constitution. They were there to destroy the Constitution. Trump won't do what an American president must do. He refuses to denounce political violence. And that's why Trump paid for all of the Antifa rioters burning down cities during the Summer of Love, right? He refused.
Right. That's why he contributed to their bail fund, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who actually did that.
Yeah. So Chris, I mean, I like that. That's what I like about your, Substacks, is you get these little off-kiltered angles you weren't thinking about. Like I don't even think about the sausage making of Trump, of Biden's speech making. It's too much of a dumpster fire dealing with the reality of this economy and everything else. But it's important for us to step back. So what's your takeaway, in general gist here with what you saw the Valley Forge speech. That's really the focus of your piece here.
He said something in that speech. He said, Jill and I have been to the funerals of the cops who died as a result of January 6th.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you listen to the way they phrase the sentence, no police officers, no Capitol police officers or Metro DC police officers who are at the Capitol died on January 6th. He knows that. They know that. And when they write the line to say, they could choose to just straight up lie and say, I went to the funerals of the cops who were killed on January 6th. But they would get caught doing that, and it's an obvious lie. So fudging, Jill and I have been to the funeral of cops who died as a result of January 6th. They knew what they were doing. They knew that they were drawing a connection that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
They knew that they were lying, but they did it sort of carefully enough to not be called liars. Like cops killed themselves months later. They committed suicide months later. So that's because of the insurrection. The insurrectionists, Donald Trump murdered those cops. They're sort of clinging to the barest, thinnest line of fake plausibility. And I thought, like, the people who do this, what do they think they're doing? What do they think they're up to? And so I went and tried to see if I could find examples of Joe Biden's speechwriters talking about what they're doing. And what they're doing is, none of them are ever subtle about it. None of them ever try to hide it. They say, Joe Biden says to us, Americans think like 8th graders, process language like 8th graders, write me a simpler speech with shorter sentences. And if they write sentences with commas and too many clauses, he cuts them down and makes them shorter. Go read, if you haven't, go read a transcript of the Valley Forge speech. It's a bunch of little one-line paragraphs with a bunch of little simple dichotomies. The Republicans want to have violence. We want not have violence. The Republicans want to do insurrection. We want to be American patriots.
He said they want insurrection. I just want to have an erection. That's what he's at. That's where he's like doing, again, fascist Dr. Seuss hour.
It's pathetic. Let us not ever think of Joe Biden's erections ever again. But the So ground and pound is in
Wait,
mixed.
why do you say that right after? Come on.
It was a pretty
Golly,
good
man.
setup. Ground and pound is in mixed martial arts,
Okay.
using jujitsu takedowns, using leg sweeps, taking people down to the ground, and then when you get them on the ground and pin them down, beating the hell out of them with your fists.
Yeah.
And so the rhetorical style that I see coming from the Biden White House, like if you look at the content of the Red speech
Yeah.
in Philadelphia, was that last year? I don't remember when that was, where he appeared in front of the backlit red building with the Marines standing behind him, and he made the two fists and he screamed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the content of this speech, he just keeps giving the same speech over and over again.
Yeah.
He's like Hitler. We like freedom. He likes violence. We love America. Simple, simple, simple.
Yeah.
Pounding, 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 pounding. And I said in the Substack piece, he's not trying to make an argument. He's trying to program stupid people. He's trying to drill into your nerves like a dentist and pound on you and make enough people, make 50% plus one of the country, feel anger and fear. Trump bad. Trump Hitler. And whenever Biden speaks now, he says, Trump says something, and that's just like what Hitler said. He wants to connect over and over and over and over again. Hitler, Trump, Hitler, Trump, Hitler,
Yeah.
Trump. It's not an argument. It's like a chant
Yeah.
that's meant to program your brain.
It's a ritual. It's ritual. It's like a liturgical. Yeah.
It's a ritual chant. And if you read interviews with his speechwriters, his communication staff, they just tell you that that's what they're doing. They just say Americans don't understand sophisticated things. The average American reads and thinks like an eighth grader. We're trying to give them the simplest possible message. They tell you directly, we're not trying to write thoughtful, interesting things. We're trying to write the simplest possible message.
Yeah. So how does like the little NPR set of Biden's coalition, when they read that stuff, how do they process the sausage making, comments about being talked to like they're stupid? Do they're like, oh, well, that's the other Biden supporters that I see as my pets. And that's not talking about me. That's talking about all those other victims that we have to protect. NPR
If you don't
radio.
listen to NPR
Yeah.
at least once a week, you really should. You really should hear. I'm always fascinated by Juana Summers. Do you know Juana Summers? He talks like a 13-year-old Valley girl. And it's NPR diction. I love listening to it. Coming up next, an analysis of Donald Trump's fascism and how he's like Adolf Hitler. So what they do is they wash it.
Yeah.
They wash it. They take the simple ground and pound repetitive messages and they dress it up in discussion from experts and professors. Everybody should know the work of Ruth Ben Guyot, who's a professor at NYU and wrote a book called Strong Men. And she says that all dictators are the same, whether you're talking about Mussolini or Stalin or Mugabe or Trump or Pinochet. They're all the same. They have a single playbook and they just repeat it. And she doesn't do systems and structures. She doesn't do, like I've said a million times, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were talking about the NSA building things like the room in the AT&T building that Wired famously got a leak about, where they were filtering everybody's phone calls, and the giant data processing center in Utah they're building to store everybody's emails and phone calls. We were talking about state systems and structures and the meaning of those things, and how things like Section 02 of the FISA law are creating the structures of authoritarianism. And a retired NSA mathematician said in an interview, we have a bunch of safeguards in place for all this NSA data, but the data all exists in incredibly dangerous ways. We've stored it in incredibly dangerous ways, such that if you just take away the safeguards, if we say one day there's an emergency and we turn off the safeguards, boom, totalitarianism. We're building systems of turnkey totalitarianism, he called it. Turnkey totalitarianism. The NPR crowd, like, as part of I think, a strategy, a communication strategy, has pivoted away from a discussion of systems and structures to a discussion of personalities and talking all day, every day about what do the experts say about Donald Trump's authoritarianism, is a way of not talking about the NSA, is a way of not talking about domestic political surveillance, is a way of not talking about the fact that, we know that the FBI, we know that, like the kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer, the kidnapping plot of Gretchen Whitmer was driven by FBI informants. These systems things, these ways that government works that we should be talking about, we're not talking about them anymore because we're talking about people. We're talking about personalities.
And identity,
Identity. And if you listen to NPR, they do a make-believe, more sophisticated version of that. They have professors on to do the ground and but they're still doing the ground and pound.
You know what the most important part of their, in my opinion, just thinking for what you said, and I don't watch the program hardly ever, do I hear it, but I think the most important part of their package is when they do their little random like science bits where they're like, and now we will discuss the ways in which magma flows. This is very interesting. Let's hear from our expert here. The magma is very interesting. And so they do that thing. And then that's the seller for all the BS because it's like, oh, that's the smart. That's the sizzle. Right? Because you're like, well, if they're telling me, if this is the place where you learn like a really interesting factoid about magma, then that's the place where it's high status people who eat at nice restaurants and have money and all that. And so you get that little nugget of factoid about magma or whatever it is. And then that downloads back to all the bull that they're talking about, for propaganda purposes,
The fascinating thing to me about NPR, like this week, I've been listening to NPR this week, is that they kind of have three stories that they just beat on over and over again. Donald Trump is very, very bad. Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler and is going to make us be fascists. Climate change is getting worse and worse and worse, and the planet is boiling. We had it was 39 degrees in Los Angeles last night. It's winter, even in Los Angeles, it gets what we consider incredibly cold, and we had waves off the coast. And so they did several days of devastating waves are pounding coastal California. We talked to scientists to find out why the oceans are boiling and the waves are slamming us, and the crisis is surging forward and we'll all be destroyed. So they do. We're going to be destroyed by Donald Trump. We're going to be destroyed by climate change. And they're still doing, in January of 2004, they're still doing constant. This just fascinates me. COVID fear-mongering. There's a new wave. Here's why you should be getting another booster. Here's why you should be wearing a mask. I live in a place where we're probably up to 10 or 15% mask wearing again in public places.
And isn't it fascinating how like NPR's whole reason for being is like trying to have a media outlet free from corporate control, and that's all they do is they're just a low rent peddler for pharmaceutical oligarchs and stuff and military merchants of death. It's so sad. And I was like, PBS brought to you by murderers and psychopaths. And that's how but you're right. And you make it, I see you, I forgot that part of their ritual is like when they mention the magma, they've always got to hit it back to climate change. So if they talk about the science of puppy dog eyes today. And then they give you a little fact that's really cute and neat about how puppy eyes look and feel and like how they see the world. And then they always have to take the puppy eye thing and talk about, and what does this have? Climate change is a real effect.
But
That's
will puppies still have eyes in
yeah,
20 years?
exactly. According to some,
Scientists say.
yeah, according to some experts, puppies' eyes are continually being degraded by the effects of climate change. And it's like they can't see as well, they can't enjoy pleasure, and this is going to result in a really horrible decline in puppy health. And this is something we should all be concerned about. So yeah, they always hit it right back. They can never talk about nature. You're right. They can never talk about nature without saying, I believe in one Father, who created heaven and earth. They can't, they've got to say their creed, man. They've got to tie it back to the
It is. It's
doxology or
agreed.
whatever. But we're going a little bit on the NPR thing, but I want to go back to this piece here because I think you're right. They're programming for stupidity. It's sad. It didn't happen overnight. This didn't start with Obama. I mean, this has been a long time happening in America. Then you get into you deconstruct it. They want to hurt you. We want to save you. They are Nazis. We hate Nazis. They want you poor. We want to give you money. And so that's what they do. With all that power, they're not able. Trump is still like rhetorically more brilliant and than this whole apparatus, and it is like a Spanish Armada versus a swashbuckling pirate or something that's kind of like weaving in and out of doing all kinds of, because he just on the aesthetics of it all. I mean, he says all this stuff, like you say, ground and pound. And the visual that I saw immediately when I attached that to Biden was, oh, that's what Biden insinuated about Trump. He said, I'll take him behind the shed and then I immediately I remember Trump saying, oh, can you remember him saying that about me? All I'd have to do is just, he'd do, and it's like that, beats all the rhetoric. There's something about the performance art. Trump knows physical. He understands physicality and physical humor and being more aware of stage presence and his size and his look and his voice and everything, timing. And when you do it's all it takes, or when he does the whole thing about he's walking around on his stage and and he does his little thing where he turns, this guy can't find his way out of a stage, and it's like that is deconstructing the whole imperial, magisterium that they work so hard to keep afloat.
Was it John Ritter who was in Three's Company?
Yeah,
I think he's the John Ritter of national politics.
Yeah,
it is fascinating watching the Republican field, and watching how much, like I have always thought about how Rick Santorum and Ron Paul used to talk to each other in debates. They just ooze disgust for each other. Like Ron Paul loathed Rick Santorum, and Rick Santorum was not at all shy about returning the hate. They despised each other.
Yeah.
And now you see like Vivek Ramaswamy talking to Nikki Haley and Nikki Haley and Chris Christie weighing in. And when you put 5 Republicans on a stage, they say 5 different things in 5 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put 5 Democrats on a stage, they say Donald Trump bad, Donald Trump Hitler, Donald Trump Orange Man bad, he won authoritarianism. I don't know how this works. I don't understand the culture of this, though I have some suggestions I would make. But the Democratic Party has messaging discipline to the point of being mindless. Go look at Twitter posts from Democratic members of Congress on January 6th. They all posted the same thing. They posted some little version of the same thing, like, this is the day 3 years ago that I was seconds away from being murdered. We must never forgive Donald Trump's treason.
Yeah.
When the Democrats speak, they all speak with the same voice. When the Republicans speak, they don't. Maybe to the point of a fault, like maybe they don't have message discipline to a fault, although the pathologies of the Republican Party are endlessly fascinating.
Yeah.
But the the mainstream party that's aligned with the news media and aligned with academia and aligned with institutions and aligned with the administrative state
Yeah.
speak with more or less one voice.
Yeah.
But the opposition party, such as it is, as weak as it is, speaks with a fragmented voice.
Yeah.
And there's a power in it to a point. But when you start seeing how stupid it is, and when you start watching Joe Biden slurring and babbling about it, he just sounded like Adolf Hitler, exactly. It has to break down at some point.
Yeah.
It has to be regarded as stupid.
Well, I'm seeing this picture you have, speaking of stupid, of this cornball Steve Cohen with looks like a grocery shopping bag over his head and some kind of an orange little face diaper. And that's what he was using to protect himself from the QAnon shaman and his horns. Like, how do the horns going to be stopped by a plastic bag? I don't understand, sir. These guys, they're not sending their best. That's for sure. You know, you're looking at this guy and he's got a Walmart shopping bag over his head, it looks like, and that's going to protect him from the QAnon shaman horns. It's not going to work, son.
Posted that image. Like, if you haven't seen that image, go find Steve Cohen's January 6th post with his plastic bag on his head. It was his desperately dramatic image of how close he came to death, and it's a dude with a bag on his head.
Did they just have like, they must have told these guys, bring your like, they're like, bring your like, you know, your national disaster show and tell object with you to work today, folks. And so somebody brings in the long nose thing, like what's that thing, the plague thing,
the plague doctor mask.
Yeah, somebody brought one of those in. Maybe one of them brought a biohazard suit, like in ET, you know, where they had to pick up the alien, and maybe somebody.
And I think AOC, I didn't watch it because I have no patience for this, but I saw that there was video all over the internet of AOC on the 3rd anniversary of January 6th, once again talking about how close she came to death.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in one of the House office buildings that no January 6th protesters entered.
What she means, though, but what she really means, she came that close to social death by being in the same room with people that are her beneath her. That's what she's saying. So for her, it's true, you know, from a low IQ narcissist perspective, like her, she's saying like, oh my gosh, the people who are not cool are like almost in my same presence as me. And it's like, that's death. That's living death.
More socially forgiving. You would think a bartender would be more socially forgiving.
Yeah, exactly. She must have been at like a little upscale bar, probably, you know. But she wasn't used to, and she probably wasn't serving a lot of like plumbers and, you know, working men working in construction at that bar. I can guarantee you that, because she was really, you know, cramping her style is what they were doing. You know, I mean, can you imagine if she had gotten in a photo with some of those old boomer guys from like Arkansas that came there? Like, if they were just in a photo, like, hey, stop. And she's like, hey, my goodness. Like, that the whole photo optic of that was not.
There are moments, I'm trying to remember them. There have been moments when people on the right have asked her, like have gotten near her and we're going to take a picture with her. I think one was is Chaya, the Libs of TikTok woman.
Yeah.
Approached her in a hallway, and AOC saw a camera.
Yeah.
And said something like, I do not want to be photographed with you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be associated with your existence.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's say it this way. It's not a joke, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whatever whatever they'd want. They don't want to be associated with those who are the designated scapegoat class or the designated losers of this political pageantry.
They need
It's
them
not
to
really
not be people.
pageantry. It's like lowbrow
They need
serial
them to be
television.
beyond the pale. They need to be untouchables. And if, God
Yeah,
forbid, you speak to someone like that,
yeah. It's brilliant, and I just when that event was happening or leading up to that January 6th, I was telling people on my live radio show, this doesn't look right. I don't think this is a good thing. There's something doesn't smell right about this thing. This is too weird. It just doesn't feel right. And the reason why is because they have so much control. That leftist ideology of the establishment has so much media control. And the thing that I knew was so wrong, that was just so obvious to me, I didn't know what it was going to look like. I'll never forget, I was doing I was doing a podcast about some kind of like scientific topic on one of my sub series, and it had run long, and I wrapped up the show. I had to wrap up the recording right as my live radio show. The train comes whether you're there ready or not. And so I closed out that show. We're done recording it, jump into the live show, and I'm like, I got to pull up the news. I didn't have time. Pull up the news on Drudge Report, and I see those people, a photo of those guys climbing the Capitol thing. And I said, oh my God, what do I got to report on today? I'm like, what in the world? This is insane. I was like, this is what? But leading up to that, I was like, this thing just doesn't smell right, because they have so much control of these media outlets. And the thing that I thought about, I was like, they're just too quiet for weeks. For weeks, the news anchors would say, there's no evidence, there's no evidence, there's no evidence. But let's go ahead and hear what Trump's people have to say. And they'd pan over to Sidney Powell and Giuliani and these people having these press conferences, and there was no pushback. They were too quiet. And I'm like, they're never too quiet. Why are they too quiet? They're too quiet. They always control the narrative. Why are they so quiet? And it was because it was the calm before the storm. It was low tide. They were pulling, the tide was withdrawn, and they were it's gonna come back. And that was
now take this moment and what's happening now. Did you see his name is Matthew Graves, the U.S. attorney for DC, did a press conference at the like January 5th, like right before the January 6th anniversary, where he talked about where they are and what's left. Did you see that press conference?
I did not, but I saw a picture of it. Yeah.
It was fascinating because he said, we've finished a lot of the most urgent cases. We finished a lot of the cases of people who attacked police officers and broke windows and forced their way into the building. And now that we've cleared a lot of that work, we're going to start working on prosecuting people who trespassed on the grounds but didn't enter the Capitol.
Yeah.
And should have known they were unrestricted grounds. And if you look at reporting from people who were there, they say like there's nothing posted on the Capitol grounds to say that this is closed. Like if you were walking around the Capitol outdoors, there was no reason to think you were trespassing. But now the Department of Justice is announcing explicitly that they intend to prosecute thousands of people
because they want the optic all through this year. Yeah.
For trespassing, for misdemeanor trespassing.
Didn't they take down the barriers too and everything and all that?
Yes.
I don't even remember all the
They took down a bunch of barriers.
Yeah.
Misdemeanor trespassing outdoors, not entering the Capitol, so that they can have the optics, so that going into the election, they can say, oh, the investigation is closing in on thousands more insurrectionists.
They want that everyday headline: 50 more people indicted in plea, 50 more people.
Thousands of insurrectionists. Yes. The army of Trump's warriors is growing.
This is classic fascist. Really, this is fascist style technique. I mean, it literally is. It's the feeling of invasion, like, because fascism is all about the idea of, like, from a psychological standpoint, the idea of like the body being contaminated with germs. Right. So when you're like constantly flooding the mind with imagery of like unclean people, like who are not vaccinated, and all this other stuff. They have the wrong speech, the wrong immunity, the wrong drugs in their body. They're not clean, and they're got the wrong association, wrong IQ, wrong city, wrong zip code, wrong state, and wrong skin tone, wrong gender, wrong everything, accent, and they're just invading. And there's these, oh, we got some more. Oh, we got some more. They're coming into our temple. That's this is totally classic, deep. Like this goes back to that, that Freudian era of Edward Bernays style, like subconscious picking at people's deepest like disgust reflexes and stuff. This is classic, fascism with feminine aesthetics, I guess.
Coupled with downplaying things like the cities that burned in the summer 2020.
Right. Yeah. As if that never happened.
As if it never happened. Coupled with downplaying the very long, weeks long nightly attack on the federal courthouse in Portland.
Yeah.
Never really happened. It was never really a thing. And it's fascinating to watch pro-Palestinian protesters taking over public space. The California legislature's first day this year, the first day of California's legislative session was interrupted. They couldn't begin by protesters storming the state capitol and taking it over.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that?
No.
Not an insurrection.
Yeah.
The protesters who took over the Wisconsin state capitol during the protests against Scott Ritter when he was the governor, and not an insurrection. Anti-gun protesters marching under the floor of the Tennessee legislature, not an insurrection. All kinds of disorder and interruption and even violence, even looting and burning, not insurrection. But thousands of people who walked on the Capitol lawn on January 6, 2021, the FBI is going to prosecute those, is going to go after trespassers. We're going to use the FBI as a trespassing force to fight Trump's army of insurrectionists.
But they just realize, I don't think they do, but they don't understand that this just backfires because scapegoats tend to have the power in our culture. So when people see that, they're already losing the narratives. Like half the country already basically doesn't buy their talking points on that event, and it's rapidly going to keep going in that direction unless they pull out some other trick of media optics or something. But which is probably something
The thing that I say over and over again as a California resident.
Yeah.
I think this thought 3 times a day is notice the difference between what your eyes are telling you and what your ears are telling you. The mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, is online every day doing news media interviews every day, talking about how rapidly we're solving the homeless problem. You can drive around Los Angeles and look at the streets. We're not rapidly solving the homeless problem. The mayor of San Francisco in 2008, a guy named Gavin Newsom, held a very confident press conference to talk about how good his plan was. He had a 10-year plan to end homelessness in San Francisco. And it's bold and strong, and he's implementing it now, and the time for excuses is over. 10 years from now, there will be no homeless people in San Francisco. He said that in 2008.
Yeah.
When you look at, Trump's street army is going to attack our country, his insurrectionists are still out there and we're in danger. And what you see is people waving Palestinian flags, taking over Grand Central Station, taking over the state capitol. What you see is the cities that burned, downtown Minneapolis still burned out, 4 years later. When what you see doesn't match what you hear, at some point you notice. Even if you've sort of disciplined your mind to adopt party discipline, at some point you notice when the messaging and the things you really see in your own real life don't match.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to this final point, and we'll leave it here. But at this article that you quoted at the end of your piece about how Joe Biden reelection campaign has been having top political reporters come to their headquarters to be told, okay, here's what you're doing right, and here's how you need to get better. You know, like,
Here's
and
our
they're mad that they're talking too much about the Trump crimes because that's backfiring. So like, stop talking about that. You know, like keep talking about all the bad quotes and scary stuff. This is not. So they're being brought in not to just do like free society's media would do to interview him and question. They're being brought in to be graded by their employer, basically. Their de
and to be
facto employer.
told what kind of reporting they need to be doing over the next
Yeah.
year. And these are off the record meetings
Yeah.
that CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times have agreed to participate in. They've agreed to be summoned to Joe Biden's campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware, to sit down for meetings that they've agreed to not report on, to be given a spreadsheet of their rhetorical errors, so the Biden campaign can explain to them what they shouldn't be saying and what they should be saying instead.
Yeah. And that, my friends, look with your eyes, is fascism.
Yes, it is. And if Donald Trump is doing it, we would know that it's fascism. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Chris. It's always great. Man, this is one of my favorite discussions we've done so far. So well done with your piece. And you can go to Chris's Substack, chrisbray.substack.com, and subscribe. Any last thoughts?
My last thought is, and this is really important, if politics over the next 11 months is about pounding you, beating you every day with messaging about fear and anxiety and, oh, look out, here comes Hitler. If politics is about making you feel unwell and anxious and fearful, don't. Work on your own health. Work on breaking away from the news. Work on family, friends, community. Work on travel. I say all the time, go to America. Go take a road trip and go see people all over your own country. People are fine all over your own country while the news is telling you about the devastating crisis that America is descending into. Go out and walk the streets and talk to people. And be healthy and calm and don't be fearful while the news is telling you to be fearful.
Yeah. That's right. For your own mental health, get away from this toxic thing and let it fall on its own face. Chris, appreciate your time. And for those who want to contact us at A Neighbor's Choice, you can email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.